Welcome back to my channel, where we dive into the most shocking and disturbing true crime cases. Today, we're going to explore a tragic story that will leave you questioning the very fabric of our justice system. Get ready to uncover the dark truth behind the disappearance and death of 19-year-old Kara Nichols. In an ideal world, investigations are conducted with utmost care, thoroughness, and objectivity. But as we've seen time and time again, this isn't always the case. Society often turns a blind eye to the injustices, making excuses like, it's their own fault. The result? Victims' families are left to suffer in silence, consumed by grief and uncertainty. The case we're about to discuss is a stark reminder of this harsh reality. From the initial search for a missing girl to the lengthy investigation and court proceedings, everything was tainted by bias. It took 10 long years, a change of detective and external intervention for the truth to finally come to light. Today we'll try to understand why the body of a young beauty was found in a livestock burial ground, who's responsible for her death, and why the victim was treated with such disdain. On October 9, 2012, 19-year-old Kara Nichols vanished in the 6700 block of Colorado Springs, Colorado. She was last seen wearing a hooded sweatshirt, dark jeans, white DC sneakers, and pink headphones. This tall blonde beauty with green eyes had two distinctive tattoos, a marijuana leaf on her right ankle and an astronaut on her left wrist, as well as numerous piercings on her back, ears, and above her lip. Flyers distributed around the city highlighted these features, along with the fact that Kara suffered from bipolar and borderline personality disorder. Her older brother Terrence was the first to suspect something was wrong, and soon her parents, Julia and Paul Nichols, joined the search operation. The family knew that despite Kara's use of banned substances, she always made contact and reported on her whereabouts. However, when she didn't call back on October 10th and 11th, her relatives became worried. They were always concerned about her, but she wanted to live a free life and refused to comply. Recently, she had become more distant and only communicated with her brother. Modeling was not yielding the desired income, so when she was offered a substantial paycheck for a lingerie photo shoot, she gladly accepted. She informed her roommates about her upcoming plans and left late at night. The shoot was scheduled for early morning in Denver, making the trip more convenient. Moreover, she was not traveling alone but was accompanied by colleagues in the business. The girls, having no driver's licenses or a car, fortunately found a suitable driver. Kara's story raised no doubts. Acquaintances had seen her work portfolios multiple times, and her social media accounts were filled with professional photographs. Everything would have been fine, except that Nichols did not return the next day, nor the day after. The last time Terrence spoke with his sister was at 11:45 p.m. on October 9th. However, their conversation was unexpectedly cut off, after which she did not call back. Then the brother thought that the connection was lost, so he calmly went to sleep, not knowing that they would definitely talk in the morning. However, on October 10th, Kara ignored all attempts to contact her. Her voicemail was continuously active. The brother again assumed she was busy or resting after work and waited for the model to appear on her own. But even on October 11th, there was no news from her. The brother's worry increased. Such silence was not typical for his close relative. In connection with this, Terrence visited her home, where he talked to neighbors. None of them had seen the friend for several days. One young man reported seeing Kara get into a dark-colored sedan around 11 p.m. Unfortunately, he couldn't see who was driving due to the darkness, but he mentioned that it seemed she wasn't alone. After that, Terrence entered his sister's room and looked around. His attention was drawn to the girl's personal items, which she never went without. Among them were a cosmetics bag, purse, charger, and laptop. $300 in cash lay on the bedside table. Clearly, Kara had not planned a prolonged absence. Then, the brother turned on her laptop. It became clear that she hadn't been online for more than 2 days. This was out of character for the aspiring model, who promptly kept up with job offers. Convinced that his concern was not in vain, Terrence decided to report to the police. At the station, he recounted everything in order. However, the law enforcement officers were not in a hurry with the search. The officers claimed that Kara was old enough and wasn't obligated to report her whereabouts to everyone. the police suggested that the girl might have been delayed at the shoot or went somewhere else. Maybe she had a boyfriend that no one knew about, and she was spending time with him. Nevertheless, the police's arguments did not satisfy Terrence. He knew his sister well, and no matter what happened, she would have definitely made contact by now. Terrence insisted that something bad had happened to her. Despite his concerns, the police did not take Terrence's words seriously and advised him to come back later. Kara Nichols was born on May 20, 1993, and was the middle child in her family. She spent her childhood with her older brother and younger sister, growing up sociable and friendly. Often surrounded by her family, Kara excelled in school and had a keen interest in art, particularly painting. As a talented child, she won several art competitions and was predicted to have a promising future. Yet she was sensitive, deeply feeling the pain of others as her own. During her teenage years, her behavior shifted. Kara became introverted and her academic performance declined. At 13, she was arrested for shoplifting, which resulted in a sentence of community service. Her parents were baffled by the sudden change, as they had always been attentive and loving, and she had never wanted for anything. Her theft was likely a form of rebellion against established norms. At 16, Kara's mental health began to falter following the loss of her beloved dog, which plunged her into a deep depression. Her parents sent her to a psychologist, but the sessions proved ineffective, and her condition worsened. Eventually, she was admitted to a psychiatric hospital, where she was diagnosed with a personality disorder. After a brief treatment, she showed improvement with the help of prescribed medications. However, due to severe side effects, Kara gradually stopped taking them and worsened her unstable mental state by using banned substances, believing them to be a better alternative to antipsychotics. Behavioral issues led her to attend several alternative schools until she finally graduated. After high school, Kara worked as a waitress and pursued her childhood dream of becoming a model. Her appearance was promising, and she sincerely believed she could succeed in the field. She diligently searched for modeling agencies and worked on her portfolio. During this time, her health noticeably improved, and she even quit her harmful addiction. However, as time passed, she realized that beauty alone was insufficient for a successful modeling career. Luck and extensive connections were necessary. In the summer of 2012, the Nichols family moved to Chicago, Illinois. However, the new city did not welcome Kara, and her depression returned. Stress led her to resume her harmful habit, despite her parents' support and attempts to help by enrolling her in a drug rehabilitation program. She was soon expelled from the program for refusing to follow the rules. The Nichols were at a loss on how to guide her, and were deeply concerned about where she was getting the money for her addiction, since her small waitress salary was clearly insufficient. After discontinuing her treatment, Kara's parents became disillusioned. Her psychological state fluctuated daily. After brief discussions, she decided to return to her hometown, believing that familiar surroundings and social circles would help restore her to life. Her family disliked the idea but could not persuade her to stay. Eventually, Kara returned to Colorado Springs. Taryn promised to look after her, and their open and warm relationship somewhat reassured the parents. However, Kara wanted independence and did not stay with her brother, only visiting him occasionally. She rented an apartment with other male tenants, shocking her parents when they learned she was living under the same roof with 3 men. They demanded she find other housing, but she refused, explaining that she had no better options and had found the men to be harmless. Gradually, everything went back to normal. Kara returned to her previous job and continued modeling work by creating a profile on Model Mayhem. Over time, she received more offers, but they did not lead to the expected results. Breaking into the desired world among thousands of profiles was challenging. Later, Kara faced problems. She fell behind on rent and even borrowed food from her roommates. She discussed these issues with her brother, who also supported her financially. Thus, she was determined not to miss the opportunity presented to her on October 9th. However, no one expected that night to be her last. Investigation. After being turned away at the police station, Taryn reached out to his parents. The eldest son recounted what had happened and asked for help, knowing that in such cases collective pressure was necessary. As soon as the family learned of their daughter's disappearance, they immediately flew to Colorado Springs. Kara's cell phone was still turned off, and it was also discovered that she had not shown up for her job. She valued her independence so much, confirming their worst fears. Convinced, the Nichols family as a whole went to the police. Law enforcement was compelled to respond to their report. Eventually, the El Paso County Sheriff's Office acknowledged that the circumstances of her disappearance raised questions. Detectives reached out to local residents asking for any information about the girl's whereabouts. At the same time, the parents allowed investigators access to her cell phone data. Experts confirmed that the last message Kara sent was to her brother. Based on cellular provider data, it was known that on October 9th, her mobile device was indeed headed north, but was then turned off. Friends and acquaintances also joined the search efforts, distributing flyers throughout Colorado Springs and Denver. After talking with her close contacts, investigators examined other means of communication used by the girl, particularly her laptop. Thus, early in the investigation, a secret the girl had closely guarded from her family was revealed. Some of her modeling work posted on websites served as a cover for the escort services she had been involved in since she was 17. This was how Paul and Julia learned the true source of Kara's livelihood. However, there was not enough time to recover from the shock. Consent was needed to disclose this information to get new leads. At the same time, this circumstance could significantly affect the investigation and decrease public interest. Unfortunately, there are many examples where the perception of the victim was notably distorted. In such cases, the Nichols didn't want to air their dirty laundry, but were forced to do so in the hope of an exception. However, no miracle occurred after the new details were published. News agencies began canceling interviews with Kara's family one by one, and coverage of the disappearance waned. The search for the girl hit a dead end. The only organization that took up helping with the investigation was the National Women's Coalition Against Violence and Exploitation. They ensured that the community and authorities did not forget about the missing model. In November 2012, detectives announced their intention to speak with two women who were believed to have been in the car with Kara on the fateful night. Some even described their appearance, and they possibly belonged to the same line of work as the missing girl. Undoubtedly, the witnesses were of interest to the investigation, but were not considered suspects. Most likely, these women were the last to see her alive. A composite sketch of one of them was made publicly available, but hopes that someone would come forward proved vain. Later, even the testimony of their existence was doubted. The investigation stalled again. That month, Kara's photos appeared on an escort service website in Las Vegas. However, detectives found that the girl had not been involved in the posting. Someone had decided to capitalize on her popularity. Subsequently, the Nichols profile was removed. Concerned citizens periodically approached the police station, but after verification, their reports turned out to be false. In the spring of 2013, a businessman from Colorado Springs claimed to have seen the sought-after woman from the end of October through December 2012. She was with a tall, unkempt man. The woman appeared frightened, as if she was being forcibly held and made to do something. One day, her companion pushed her, which did not escape the notice of a bystander. He threatened the man and asked him to leave the lady alone. The eyewitness's statement was verified, and the police managed to find the man described. However, detectives confirmed that the woman with him was his former girlfriend. In the autumn of the same year, a criminal law student decided to investigate Kara's case independently. He traveled to Denver and spoke with many homeless people and substance users. Some of them reported seeing the missing woman at a non-profit organization dealing with the exchange of syringes and needles for those using banned substances. However, it later turned out that the lead was false, and so it was with every testimony. Many had already given up hope of finding the story's heroine alive. Too much time had passed for this type of case. In the summer of 2013, the girl's parents announced a reward for any information regarding their daughter's whereabouts, but it all seemed futile. Kidnapping for ransom was ruled out, as no demands had been made over the months. A new development the following year brought a sensational breakthrough that spurred movement in the investigation. In May 2014, Deputy Sheriff Cliff Porter admitted to having cut corners in the investigation. Unexpectedly, he disclosed that he had not given enough attention to Kara Nichols's case and, most importantly, had overlooked substantial evidence that could have played a critical role in the early stages of the investigation. This confession shocked the Nichols family, as they felt the investigation into their daughter's disappearance had been treated carelessly due to her line of work. The inadequate handling of cell phone records was called into question. The entire office's conduct and the authorities' inaction did not go unnoticed. Numerous audits brought discipline to the department, and those responsible were removed from their positions. In May 2016, former Sheriff Terry Makita and members of his staff were charged with corruption, fabricating witness testimony, kidnapping, and extortion. This convinced the victim's family that their relative's case had never been appropriately handled. Nevertheless, this event provided a new impetus for the investigation. Thanks to a change in detectives in February 2022, the missing woman's body was discovered. She was found buried in a grave alongside a horse's corpse on a farm near Colorado Springs. But let's go through the details in order. The suspect, on February 1, 2022, a woman named Christina Hollendorfer walked into the police station. Detectives had tried to speak with her several times before, but she had refused to cooperate since 2014. The witness had been unwilling to testify against her former husband Joel. However, years later, she broke her silence and accused her ex of murdering Kara Nichols. An examination of the missing girl's calls and messages revealed that she had received 8 calls between 9:58 and 11:08 p.m. on October 9th, most of which were from a man named Joel Hollendorfer. Detectives had interrogated him several times, but beyond general information, they discovered little. He admitted to having hired the woman's services and had planned to meet her from the evening of October 9th to the morning of October 10th. However, the meeting never occurred. The escort did not make it to him. His statement raised suspicions, especially since the geolocation data from Kara's mobile device indicated that on the night of her disappearance, she was near the suspect's parents' house. On October 15, 2014, a search was conducted at Joel Hollendorfer's and his family's home. At the time of the search, detectives spoke with Joel and his mother, Betty. They noted their calm and friendly demeanor, which did not suggest that they were hiding anything. They kindly showed the entire property, including several fresh burial sites for deceased animals. It's worth noting that the Hollendorfer family had owned the farm since 1985 and had a large livestock yard. Dogs trained to find human remains searched the area and reacted to some of the livestock graves a few times. However, further examination of their contents revealed nothing suspicious. It was possible that the dogs confused the scent of dead animals with that of a human. To definitively rule out Joel's involvement in the crime, samples from some suspicious areas were collected for analysis. However, the test showed that the samples were unrelated to the case. Nevertheless, suspicions about the man were not lifted. It turned out that Hollendorfer had a history of harassment and violating restraining orders. He was a hardened criminal who had repeatedly violated the terms of his parole. Moreover, he had used banned substances, which had contributed to the breakdown of his family. The investigation had approached his ex-wife, Christina, at least twice during conversations. It was established that Christina and Joel were raising 2 children together. Initially, the woman was reluctant to share details of their life together, and later refused to communicate altogether. Thus, along with other theories regarding Kara's disappearance, Joel remained the only suspect. Finally, after 8 years, his identity was exposed. Mrs. Hollendorfer claimed that in November 2014, her ex-husband confessed to her that he had accidentally ended the life of a hired escort and buried her body in an old horse grave. She learned about this after the death of her father-in-law. When the funeral was over, her former husband revealed that he felt guilty about his father's death. According to her, he confessed to his parents what he had done. Learning the terrible news, the elder Hollendorfer fell into a deep depression, became seriously ill, and soon died. All this time his family had been covering for the criminal. This explained the incredible hospitality and cooperation that Betty and Joel displayed during the farm search. Everything was done to avoid raising further suspicion. On February 3, 2022, another search was conducted at the suspect's home and property. This time the farm was thoroughly dug up. Subsequently, human remains were found in a pit 2 meters deep. 4 days later, the 47-year-old man was arrested. Later analysis confirmed that the found corpse belonged to the sought-after Kara Nichols. Essentially, only her bones remained. However, thanks to modern technology, the girl was successfully identified. The defendant, during interrogation, didn't break down immediately. Eventually, however, he confessed that he had not intended to end the girl's life. He had indeed found her on an intimacy services website on October 9th. He called her and arranged a meeting, after which he picked her up from her home. Intimacy occurred in his old car. Everything was fine until, in a moment of passion, the man began to strangle his companion. Once Joel realized that Kara had lost consciousness, he stopped. Initially, he tried to administer first aid, but it was too late. Kara was already deceased. Frightened, the criminal drove her to his family farm and buried her in the first grave he found. He moved the body several times and eventually buried it where his mother's favorite horse was interred. This explained why the search dogs were confused by the scent. Moreover, during the initial search, this particular area had not been inspected. Soon, Joel Hollendorfer was charged with first-degree murder and tampering with evidence. Meanwhile, Betty denied any knowledge of the crime committed by her son, asserting that she had always cooperated with the investigation and genuinely believed in his innocence. The hearings took place in the summer of 2023. The prosecution insisted that the defendant had intentionally committed the crime, thus realizing his sinister fantasies. At the same time, forensic experts could not provide detailed information about the victim's death. However, based on the fact that Kara's hyoid bone was broken, asphyxiation was named as the cause of death. Experts claimed that one cannot accidentally strangle someone to death. There is always time to reconsider and stop. Another factor considered was the victim's state under the influence of banned substances. Hollendorfer's defense argued that Nichols's death was due to asphyxiation from which she could not recover. Under similar circumstances, the likelihood of recovery for a healthy person is significantly higher than for a substance-dependent individual. As depicted during the trial, an entrenched addict, which the victim was portrayed to be, would have no chance of survival. This was explained by the long-term effects of banned substances on the human body. Unfortunately, it was impossible to confirm or refute the lawyer's statements. Over time, the Nichols family was extremely upset by how their daughter was portrayed. Kara's father noted that this judgment negated any sympathy from the jurors and depicted her as an unworthy victim. Nonetheless, during the trial, Joel did not appear remorseful. Some observed that he even smiled at times. Ultimately, the defendant's actions were reclassified to second-degree murder. He was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 24 years in prison. The sentence did not satisfy the victim's family, who had hoped for a life sentence for the perpetrator. Moreover, due to insufficient evidence, no one else was punished. Julia and Paul Nichols called the process a complete miscarriage of justice. The bereaved parents hoped that, despite the numerous labels attached to their daughter, Kara's friends and acquaintances will remember her positively, not just as sensational news. She was a teenager who battled with mental health issues but was cruelly dehumanized, concluded the girl's mother about the investigation and trial process. Do you think justice was fully served in the case of Kara Nichols's disappearance and death? Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe to my channel. There are many shocking stories ahead of you.